Hello, everybody, and welcome back to This is the Year, the Swiss AI Engineering Podcast. And today, again, we only have one co-host because the other one still, unfortunately, is on medical leave. Just went on surgery, Bene. So, Schwab, we're only the two of us today. So we were what's the name? The dynamic duo.
Dynamic
How do we
duo,
need to
and
call it?
we have the best two out of the three people in the podcast,
Exactly.
so we should be fine.
Absolutely.
Ben can disagree when he comes along, but for now we can just
now
pretend that we're the most important people here.
100%. So just for the audience, I'm shooting it from Bali. Joao is in Lisbon. So I followed track on the usual summer residence. I came from China and I went to Mongolia as well. Maybe I can just put a few pictures and maybe some impressions on the Bali lifestyle here on the video before we talk about AI, but it's been pretty good routine. Getting up early, training a lot, and doing and building AI from the villa here. It's a good lifestyle. And Joao, usually I'm a bit more pushy probably when I'm in Bali. The chats are filled and the ideas are flowing a little bit more as well.
I think it's the biggest change is the time zones. So Cyril is texting me at 2, 3 a.m. Maybe for him is it's normal, like maybe he just woke up or maybe he's going to bed. But I'm mostly sleeping. And so it's always nice to wake up with texts related to work and AI.
So you already have a backlog before you can even finish breakfast.
Yeah, people usually have good. Like those AI routine planners, so you can have like Gemini plan your day. I have Cyril, which is costing me about the same, and has like a more detailed custom version of my
So I know
routine.
exactly what I need to tailor that. Great. So just for the audience, we shoot these episodes every single week. It's all about AI engineering. We're trying to enable you as professionals, entrepreneurs, or even students to be building AI systems using large intelligent models like in the last week's episode. In today's episode, we're going to break down a little bit more on the Grok notions again, talking about these large intelligent models, how to build them, using a modular approach. We talk a bit about open source. And at the end, for you guys prepared, I added a little bit of a finance corner because usually you ask me, I should do another one of them. And I got some DMs on TikTok specifically that, yes, why not we add that finance corner here in for you on a few of these episodes as well. So that's for the end. But maybe let's kick it off quickly with the Grok 4 release. We talked about that last week in full detail. The model came out. It kind of shocked the world. Something I think I forgot mentioning last week, and I thought it's kind of an interesting notion. Maybe you can also add on that, Joao, later on. It's just this training architecture, because at the end of the day, just for context, Grok 4 most likely was trained on actually the previous chips of NVIDIA, so the Hopper series, the H100s of the world, and actually not the most up-to-date NVIDIA chips, the Blackwell series. In the future, NVIDIA will launch, again, many more chips and many more cutting-edge ones. But these models that we are currently seeing, they're actually not trained on these advanced chips. And that kind of means, maybe in reverse, that Grok 5 might even be an order of magnitude better than Grok 4, because they will actually be trained on these other chips. I just thought that's kind of an interesting notion as well, that we are actually having the models that are so impressive today on these benchmarks. I can put them on the screen again here just for you to check out, that are actually not being trained on the latest chips. Sure, you had some other notion there as well, but that's just something I forgot to mention last week.
I don't work in accounting in any of those companies, but I just think it's very similar to the concept of buying an iPhone like every a couple of years. XAI got a really big cluster from NVIDIA of GPUs. As you see, like, NVIDIA is going to launch a new series. These new series are a lot more energy efficient, usually more performant, and so it's up to the decision on how big do you buy each time. So it's not like buying $1,000 iPhone. It's like buying a $40,000 GPU, but times 100,000, sometimes like 20,000 of those GPUs. So it's not like your Walmart purchase of just going to the store. It's something you have to make deals with companies, have to have some kind of planning, because it's not going to be available when you want to buy it. And they have to keep updating these models. Otherwise, other companies will have the latest version. It's kind of, I think, a balancing game of how big you make a cluster and how often you update it. But we're going to expect Grok 5 or Grok 6 to be already on those new architectures, because again, it's a lot cheaper for them to run in terms of power consumption and performance.
Like something I'm also particularly curious. I mean, there's always this inference load on the chips, but also the training. So both of the chips, however they are orchestrated in a data center, might be, in other words, being run to train the models, so actually to generate the intelligence. But then another set of chips, another set of architecture might be then used for inference, meaning the actual thinking of the model. So you're doing reasoning on ChatGPT o3 that might be using, for example, H100s or Blackwells. We don't even know as a user. But just the notion that the larger chips, the more advanced chips, they're actually currently just being deployed in the data centers, and the future models are then going to be trained on them. And whatever the mix of inference will be, we as users, final users, most of the time we don't even know. Maybe quickly associated to that, I thought it's also a nice thing to quickly add on, especially if you're an European-based builder, something I just briefly noticed on our cloud bill, because we're actually being built on USD. And if you have some sort of maybe affix consideration, I put maybe the affix to Swiss francs or euro here on the screen. I know this is a bit of technical detail, but it actually just increases your margin of your product. I think that's an interesting point as well. If we're talking about chips and cloud compute cost, if you're building USD, because the USD, the US dollar is kind of decreasing in value, you're actually gaining an increased margin on your AI services or AI products. I just thought that's an interesting one as well. Just the accountant was like, okay, have you actually checked that the margin increased? I didn't even think about that in the first place. But yeah, many of the cloud expenditure we have on the SaaS side, it's actually using a data center that is being built in USD. So I think this is an interesting notion as well. So if you can choose, for example, if you're a builder, which type of billing you get, of course, if you're in the States, you might go with the USD. But if you're in Europe, maybe choose USD billing and check if you also yield an increased margin. I just thought that's an interesting notion. Then quickly,
it's a whole new kind of currency trading.
Exactly. It's just like you're basically
timing the forex exchanges to get your bill just right
for your AI compute. I thought that's really interesting. Then, Joao, you mentioned open source. Kick it off with open source for the next few minutes. What is there with China?
Side direction change, I think, in open source. So we had a pretty major player in the open source models, which was Meta, and a lot of like the Llama models were, if not the best, at least in the top 3 or top 5 of open source models. And we talked about in the channel in previous episodes that Meta got the latest talent from OpenAI, from Google, from Anthropic. So they announced their team like it's an NBA All-Star like new team that they're gonna build.
Like a draft.
And, yeah, just like a draft, yeah. And the thing is, all the rumors and all the news that we're seeing are pointing in the direction that the new models coming out from Meta are going to be closed source. So the argument was that the Meta was launching open source models because they could not compete with OpenAI and Gemini from Google or Anthropic models directly, and so they could compete in the open source world, which was a bit easier to get in and also get a lot of really good PR for launching open source and just helping people in general. But now that they have the talent, now that they can compete, closed source is, I think, a really good market to be in. There's a lot of profit to be made there. And so we're going to lose Meta as a top player in the Western side of things for open source models, which are going to be replaced. And this is like another news that's been coming out with Chinese models. So we had Kimi from Moonshot AI. So like there's a lot of Chinese startups launching these open source models. We're not sure for how long they're going to be doing that, but for now, China has been, I think, one of the most, and now the most important player in open source models. So Kimi is, I think it's Kimi 2, and it's a massive, massive model, like 1 trillion parameters. It's very hard to run on your local hardware, but if you're and data center, then it's not really a concern of yours. But it can compete and is competing at the performance level of the best OpenAI models and the best Google models. So it's a very competitive performance for an open source model that you can just deploy on your own and have your own inference points. And I think I'm going to be seeing a lot of new research and a lot of new improvements from Chinese players. And for companies who want to deploy their own models, if you want the best performance, if you want the best cost per performance in your products, then you might have to choose Chinese models. And it's going to be really fun for your legal department to be able to evaluate the risk and what is the contract deal that you can have for those Chinese models. They are open source, but they usually come with strings attached. And so it's going to be a whole new kind of challenge because from the European side, from the US side, I don't see any new major open source players coming into the market, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think it's a really good notion. Maybe before we the show, Joao, you and me, we quickly chatted around China. So I've been going to China fairly frequently, I would say almost every year the last few years. And I can really see the step function change that they're doing just generally in technological advancements. I was in Shanghai last week for some networking and meeting some friends there that are living there. They're working in tech as well. And it's basically really, really mind-blowing. So every single year I go there, there's something like just ginormously that's changed. Of course, they have been relying on the smartphone a lot more than we are in Europe. Social shopping, like on TikTok, that maybe this is going to be rolled out in the next 72 months, maybe. That's been around there for quite a while. And if we take the same function of digital progress and just the intertwining of data collection and using large data sets to basically be generating a great digital products, and we just infer whatever they have been doing without any advancements to the AI space, I think it would be quite a mistake to assume China is left behind. Also, I think it goes a bit into the finance corner at the end of today's episode, but NVIDIA is now again able to ship the H20, so maybe the little bit downgraded chips to China. I think personally, since I'm not an American citizen or I'm simply a shareholder of NVIDIA, I think it's a good thing for the business. But again, they are being supplied with chips, not maybe the most latest chips, but that again yields probably better open source models if China is really moving in that particular front. For me personally, I think China is a country where we have to have on the radar in AI. Again, every time I go there, I'm blown away. So be it Shanghai, Shenzhen, or any of these industrial cities, Shuao, next time you come with me. And I hopefully will surprise you with one or two things. My Chinese is still very, very basic, but maybe
But you
I
have
need
some
to...
Chinese in you, so some capability of speaking Mandarin, which
Yeah,
is like I think a lot more than I can say for myself. Maybe I can go on
it's
Duolingo and try it out.
yeah, it's Google Translate plus a little bit of my self-made Chinese, and I kind of survive on the turf in the East. Yeah, but I think just to sum it up for you in the audience, open source was heavily driven as like this kind of magical thing we should be pursuing. OpenAI started like that, then they closed it up basically. Meta seems to do the same, and we have China still probably for the foreseeable future, and still maybe holding on to open source as well. Maybe just from the general perspective, some gear shift quickly to zoom out to another topic for today is maybe the launch of Perplexity, the browser. Shuo, have you used Comet, the browser of Perplexity yet or not? Because I'm still on the wait list. I don't know if you have used it, and maybe what's your first take on them launching a browser?
On the browser, I try to avoid AI features on the browser side, maybe just for now, mostly because when I'm browsing, is that like a privacy concern of the AI just being there? I do have a lot of AI tools, but there are plug and play, and I can choose to enable them when I want to. But even Firefox, which is like for now a legacy browser, like we had it for a couple of decades now, they also have a lot of AI features, and I think Chrome, Brave, and a lot of like the mainstream browsers and try to incorporate as much AI features, in this case Gen AI features, as possible. And they're all, for now, I think Firefox is mostly free for everything you do. Perplexity, I think, has a billing program that you can have a subscription.
Yeah.
But
Like I
there's
actually pay for the
this,
Perplexity, but it's still not included. I would have to upgrade for Max, which I haven't
there's
yet.
always a new subscription. But I think it's a macro trend of starting out with something free to get users, get interest from your demographic, and then start slowly like billing it and making it more expensive. Same thing with Claude Max. So Anthropic launched like this really good coding tool for CCLI based on Claude for Opus. And initially, even the basic subscription of $100 got you really, really far. So you could spend $1,000 worth of tokens by just having this $100 subscription every month. Now they're starting to close it up. So you have like windows that you cannot surpass some kind of limit. Usually I think it's 5-hour windows. Then it resets and you can keep going in your work. But you're seeing this macro trend apply to pretty much every single company, that you have some kind of free feature, and then you start to get billed for it. And the freemium brackets get smaller and smaller and more limited. So I think it's going to be a game, at least for next year or so, to skip between companies to use their free stuff before they close it up.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, compute, because at the very beginning of my SaaS journey in AI, we thought about should we do a free tier, but like in this concept and in this world, there is like, for us, it's just a cost structure, right? So if I give something for free, literally I have to pay the compute myself. Yes, I might have customers that I can then upsell a more advanced, a more premium feature in the future as well, but at least for the foreseeable, maybe months, maybe even years, the user will just cost me money. I'm like, just based on architectural decision, we are not using any of the data, so I can't even use the user as a data collector. So I cannot use the data itself as well. So we also don't see the chats, for example, and all that stuff. So it's just a simple cost structures. For the Perplexity, I think, just to bring it back to the point of the browser, I think it's mostly a notion on the distribution, because if you have browsers built into, for example, a MacBook, or in the future, maybe there's even an Apple deal happening with Perplexity, they certainly gain more traction maybe on the distribution of their AIs. Other than that, maybe OpenAI will win the race. So for me, I think the Perplexity move, getting a browser in that particular time, now in July 2025, most likely was also a bit of a display how good the search can be if you have an AI native browser that's basically having agentic features in it. I'm curious to check it out, especially to book trips. It takes me a lot of time usually, and like maybe Airbnb. So if I can just say, this is my trip happening to, for example, to Colombia in September, October, please book me the Airbnb, book me the flights, maybe book me a gym, maybe book me a co-working. I would like to have a cool area like El Poblado or whatever there is, and it just goes off, flies, and does all the booking for me. I think that would save me a tremendous amount of time. So let's see. Maybe on the
there
notion
go
of
travel agencies
exactly.
like, out of market, or just to kind of improve and have their own AI tools, which are just a bit better than the general available ones.
That's actually a good point. Thank you for bringing it up, Joao. Just the segue of maybe new verticals that we see being launched by these companies. What was your notion maybe on Perplexity for finance, or also Claude, I think, for financial services? Is that really sufficient as a professional, or you would still say we need more engineering to really have a good vertical agent?
I think you're gonna have, and this has been the trend for the start of Gen AI, so since 2023, that the generally available tools, so not made specifically for your company or not made specifically for your market segment, it can get better and better, right? So you don't have to have your own. Back in the day, a lot of companies had their own webmail, right? Like their own webmail servers, their own mailing like filters and spam like detectors, and now a lot of people use Outlook for Microsoft or just Gmail in general because those tools got better and like controllable enough that can be adopted into companies. And you're gonna start seeing it in the AI world. General AI tools from Claude, from like these new startups that are coming up, start going to be good enough that you can use in your company. In Switzerland and like in some companies and market segments, because the data restrictions are so high, you're gonna keep having very custom software made for you, because it'd be hard or be close to impossible to use generally available ones, not only for data restrictions or legal restrictions, but also the functionality might not be there for that one specific thing that you want to automate. But for most cases, and a lot of cases, you're gonna have these like generally available ones that are just good enough, cheap enough that you can widely adopt, just use out of the box. And I think Claude for financial analysis might be one of them, because Claude is a really good model, can do really good code, and so given an access to some data sets and tables that has financial indexes into, you can make graphs, get some indicators for you, create a report for you. I think it will help massively in financial analysis. But then again, there's always that side of you can create your custom one, and it might be just a factor of what cost you want to put into it. If you're willing to budget a little bit more, then you can have something custom, something that works just for your company, and mostly that can integrate direct with your software, so you can read from your specific data sets. You can go specifically to your platforms to talk with them.
Especially in the integration of the landscape, depending if you have a cloud infrastructure already running, or if you have many other systems. So all these, I think Claude comes, maybe I can put it on the screen just for context, comes with APIs to many of the data providers in the financial services segment. So that's certainly a good notion, but maybe you have internal systems that you would want to link with MCPs, model context protocol servers, and maybe that needs a little bit of tweaking and adjustment. I think I was just generally curious specifically for the financial services sector, because that's mostly the domain that I've been involved in the last 10 plus years. And so these models are really leverage now for actual verticals and not just simply here the models you have and now you can build on top of them. Maybe just another quick segue into, well, if you were to build that basically for yourself, we have many videos on these notions, but if you say, okay, you would like to build maybe this financial agent, what are maybe some initial building blocks, Joao, you would say we need?
I think the single agent approaches are the easier to start with, but if you want to compete with the generally available tools, you have to get a grip of multi-agent systems. So you have to know how LangGraph or other frameworks work. LangGraph is the most production-ready one. I think it's the most widely adopted one by a margin, like in terms of users and just features integrated into it. But you have to know how to build these multi-agent systems, how agent handovers happen. For example, if you have different agents, do they know about each other? Can they pass it on to the conversation or the task to different agents accordingly? Or do you have one supervisor that knows what each agent does, but the agents themselves don't know about each other? And so you have to decide on how to orchestrate. And we had an episode about this called Topology, where this interaction and what agents talk to each other, what tools they have access to, how the flow operates. There's a whole array of configurations that you can do. And there's not one single best approach to this. It really depends on the use case. It really depends on what you want to do. A lot of times, for example, you might build a small graph, like trying to build a report. So one agent's going to build the report, some agent's going to review it, and then pass it on to the builder to like improve and do iterations until it's in a better result than initially started. But that's just like, for example, 2 agents for building a report. Then you might have another agent to get the data for a report, to get the graphs, and like, for example, make it pretty or make it sure that all the relevant information is there and all the information that's on the report is actually truthful. Maybe there's a number that's off. Maybe that's a number that got hallucinated along the way, because hallucinations are still a thing that you have to take into account. And so you have to take into account how to work with these multi-agent systems and how granular you make each agent. So you can have one specific agent for each one of the specific things. So you can have an agent for building line graphs, an agent for building bar graphs, but at a certain point, not only going to have a lot of code and a lot of things to take care of, but also a lot of cost too. Because if an agent only builds bar graphs, then you spent that time on an agent to build it, to run it, and it only does one specific thing. So it's a balancing act of how many agents you really need for your use case and how specific are they to what they're doing. We had an episode on that. You can go through our watch list and just maybe see how to build it.
Maybe I can put it on the screen if I find it 20 plus episodes. Is there a magic number, Joao, where you would say if it's multi-agent, you need to at least have 3, 4, 5, 7? I think I once in a forum some months ago saw the magical number of 7 agents, and you shouldn't go beyond? Or what's your take today? I have an opinion, but you go first.
If you're going beyond 7 agents, you should already be an expert builder. Like, that's not your first project. If you're building 7+ agents on your first project, you're in for a treat. But a lot of those magic numbers, if you notice, are uneven, because in most of the topologies, not all of them, but most topologies have some kind of supervisor, some kind of reviewer. So there's always one standout agent that's seeing all the flow from all the agents and trying to direct it. Basically, even if it's just some kind of guardrail that's seeing if the agents are not going off course, but it can also be a supervisor that's overseeing each agent and delegating tasks accordingly, which is like a really common topology, a really common architecture to do in this kind of multi-agent use cases, is to have a delegator that picks up the task, makes a plan, and then delegates each one of the subtasks to the appropriate agents.
I think it's a good also time to segue quickly. I mean, we quickly talked about the financial vertical and these topologies, meaning this is just basically a bit of a roadmap or a map how you can arrange the agents, for example, a swarm or any other topology or kind of a Lego building block. But now the question is just basically from these type of general architectures, you can be building anything in the realm of the future, which basically that enable use cases. For example, in the logistics area, I think this is underserved with AI. In biology, I think there's a huge market on top of AI that you can be building in this segment. Financial services we talked about. Is there any other industries, Joao, where you would say in 2026 this is going to be AI enabled with different topologies, or you don't have a preference yet?
I think it'd be pretty hard pressed to find an industry that wouldn't benefit from AI. In most jobs, if you ask them what your day-to-day is, there usually is, even if not day-to-day, your week-to-week. there's a pretty big component of boring work. Like I knew some people working in medical research that a lot of their time was built on data prepping. So they get the data, they'll run the results like in the labs, but to actually analyze the results, they have to go into the computer, run code that they're not used to running because they're mostly trained on medical engineering and that part of science, not really the programming part. And so they would spend a lot of time on that. And having some cloud agent, for example, that can go to the Excels, go to their data sets and make them the graphs, make them the correlations that they need to do so that they can then check if it proves their hypothesis. I mean, it just solves a big part of the research in most fields, I think. And then again, you also have, for people who are not doing research, you have emails, you have calendars that you want to sync and update, you have invites you have to arrange. So there's always some boring tasks that you might want to delegate.
I like to look at this in the exact same lens as you just displayed. AI, I think, is taking away the burdensome task we knowledge workers or generally humans have to do, and we hopefully can and will focus on the elements that we are challenged by and like to do. Let's see if that plays out or if we are just getting replaced by the whole notion. I do not believe there was also this interesting report. I don't want to go too much into detail, but basically be stating that it's a report by Gartner, which jobs are now needed in the world of AI. Again, there are many, many different jobs being generated, like an AI ethicist, an AI writer, an AI modeler, a knowledge engineer, and so on and so on and so forth. I maybe put it on the screen here and also in the description for you to check out if you're interested. It just showcases, again, this is a new industry, more or less new in the last few years. It's being just built in front of our eyes. And within a new industry, there's always new needs for particular humans doing a particular job. And so I don't think it's always great to only read the headlines that are super negative. We lose the jobs, humans are being replaced, but also having the notion of new jobs are being created. Yes, some are under risk. This is another report, put it on the screen, by Microsoft, that said basically there is a particular scoring that they did, which jobs are the most likely to be replaced or just maybe evaded by AI. Everything maybe in the writing space is high in the list, but there's certainly other job functions, again, that are being built or that have not yet had any impact on the AI world. Gentlemen, before we wrap up, Finance Corner, I make it short, but in the July months and days is usually where the quarterly results are coming out. So far we have to wait for the bigger ones like NVIDIA. That's still in August, I think it's coming. Microsoft is also still pending, but we've seen the results from Google or Alphabet. And maybe just two things I can highlight. The cloud revenue is ballooning. Everybody's using Google Cloud, GCP.
Who would have said that cloud is being more used than ever?
Who could have forecasted that 6 months ago? But this is certainly something that, like the analysts, they expected a particular increase, but it was an increase beyond the expectation. And the second thing I believe is also an interesting notion, similar to Microsoft, Google is doubling down on the compute expansion. So they are intending to spend even more, tens of billions of USD as opposed that they last announced. So these two notions I think are fairly interesting. The stock price didn't really change much. I think 2-3% were added on top of the 191. Now it's trading around 193, 194 USD. TBD where we are landing with Google. I'm still skeptical, somewhat convinced, somewhat still skeptical if the search business is going to be absolutely under harm with AI, or if they're actually finding the turnaround. And I believe I just recently did an O3 analysis on ChatGPT. I do this like once a week for the forward price earnings ratio. This is a bit like a number where how cheap is a stock. So if, for example, the number yields 30 to 40, like for example, NVIDIA, this is very high. So a lot of people are pricing in a lot of growth in the stock. And Google, I think, is around 20. Meaning a lot of people are a bit unsure if the core business, the search one, is really under threat or it's not. So it's kind of the Max 7. If you look at the Max 7, all the stocks of the Magnificent 7 of the US tech companies, Google is by far the cheapest currently to buy. No financial advice. Joao, if you wanted to say that, as always.
I was planning, I was going to ask, we're planning to do the disclaimer before or after you...
Or during.
Maybe offering some stock advice, but it's most definitely not stock advice.
Just I try to keep it high
on the market.
Exactly.
I'm also really interested in the energy sector because Google is buying more compute, Microsoft is buying more compute, everyone's buying more compute.
Good
So
point, yeah.
NVIDIA is going up, obviously, but NVIDIA doesn't run on air. It runs on large amounts of power and some water to cool it down. Because I'm foreseeing, not naming specific companies, then again, I don't want to get sued, but there's a lot of investment in startups in the diffusion, researching how to do fusion for power, but you're gonna have a really big increase, not just in fusion, but in renewables in general, maybe coal, depending on how desperate they are for power, because they are usually faster to build. It's a lower cost to entry for power plants when you don't go for renewables. So power in general, power demand is increasing at a very, very rapid rate. And I was joking with Cyril at the beginning of the episode that a heat wave is going to hit Lisbon, I think, in next week. And I'm going to be directly competing with data centers for who uses the most power, my AC or their GPUs. I think they have the upper hand for now, but we'll see next week. And that's
Your
going to
AC
be the trend for the next few years, which is data centers are going to use more and more power. And when you see the pie chart of power consumption around the world, I think you might have just a slice of that pie dedicated to AI in data centers.
It's like Joao's villa in the Algarve is using a lot of electricity these days. So you're basically competing against Microsoft Portugal for their Azure data centers. Great. I think this is a wrap. We covered a lot of ground today. It's a bit of a freestyle mixed episode, but there were so many things happening. We haven't even shed light on the American AI Act that came out for deregulation. Just put that on the show notes as well for you to check out. I think there's so many things happening that we could yet shoot another podcast episode, but the next one is already around the corner. We shoot these episodes every single week, most of the time Thursdays or Fridays. Now with different time zones, it's a bit a challenge sometimes to align. But if you have anything we should be covering, you in the audience for a subsequent episode, feel free to drop a comment, ask us a question, and we are also happy to hear from you on different social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. Joao, anything to finish up the episodes from your end, or we're good to go?
I think we're going to be covering next week, most probably next week, if not even before, the new XAI feature on Grok, the companions feature. You might have heard about it. We're going to go all deep into it next episode because I think it's getting really popular, especially on Reddit and the internet. But we'll see next week. Just a teaser.
Good teaser. Thank you, Joao. Good. Also, wrap it up. Episode 22. See you in the next one. Take care, Joao.
See you next week.
All the best. Bye-bye.